Before the arrival of Europeans, North America was home to a diverse array of indigenous peoples. These were not merely scattered tribes, but complex societies with rich cultures and traditions. In the southwest, the Pueblo people built impressive cliff dwellings and mastered irrigation techniques. Further east, the Mississippian culture constructed massive earthen mounds, evidence of their sophisticated social organization. The eastern woodlands were inhabited by various Algonquian and Iroquoian-speaking groups. They lived in villages, practiced agriculture, and engaged in extensive trade networks. On the Great Plains, nomadic tribes followed the buffalo herds, their lives intricately connected to the natural world. The Pacific Northwest was home to skilled fishermen and woodworkers, while the Arctic regions were inhabited by Inuit people adapted to harsh, icy conditions. These diverse cultures had their own forms of government, spirituality, and artistic expression. They had lived on these lands for centuries, developing unique ways of life in harmony with their environment. The arrival of Europeans in the late 15th century would forever alter the course of their history, marking a turning point in the story of America. The year 1492 marked a turning point in world history. It was a year that would forever alter the course of human events and the fate of entire continents. Christopher Columbus, sailing for the Spanish crown, reached the Americas. His journey, though not the first of the New World, was the most significant in terms of its lasting impact. This discovery from a European perspective set off a wave of exploration and conquest. Adventurers and conquerors from various European nations set sail, driven by the promise of new lands and untold riches. Europeans, driven by gold, glory, and the desire to spread Christianity, arrived on American shores. They encountered diverse indigenous cultures, each with its own rich history and traditions. The Spanish established colonies in the Caribbean, Mexico, and South America. These colonies became centers of wealth and power, extracting vast amounts of resources and reshaping the local societies. Their arrival brought not only cultural exchange, but also disease and exploitation. The indigenous populations suffered greatly from diseases to which they had no immunity, leading to dramatic declines in their numbers. Other European powers soon followed. Nations like France, England, and the Netherlands sought their own footholds in the New World, each with their own ambitions and strategies. The French explored the St. Lawrence River Valley and established fur trading posts. They developed a network of trade with Native American tribes, exchanging European goods for valuable furs. The English established settlements along the Atlantic coast, laying the foundation for what would become the United States. These early colonies were often precarious, struggling to survive in a new and challenging environment. The first permanent English settlement, Jamestown, was founded in Virginia in 1607. Despite facing severe hardships, including famine and conflict, the colony managed to endure and grow. The Pilgrims, seeking religious freedom, arrived in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. Their journey was fraught with peril, but their determination to practice their faith freely drove them forward. These early colonies faced numerous challenges, from harsh winters to conflicts with Native Americans. The settlers had to adapt quickly to their new environment, learning to cultivate the land and build sustainable communities. However, they persevered, driven by a desire for land, opportunity, and religious freedom. Their resilience and determination laid the groundwork for future generations. As more Europeans arrived, the colonies grew, and the stage was set for a clash of cultures and ambitions that would shape the destiny of the continent. The interactions between European settlers and indigenous peoples would lead to profound changes, both positive and negative, that continue to resonate to this day. By the mid-18th century, 13 colonies stretched along the eastern seaboard of North America. These colonies, each with its own unique characteristics and governance, formed a patchwork of communities that were both distinct and interconnected. They were a diverse mix of people with different religions, languages, and ways of life. From the Puritans in New England to the Quakers in Pennsylvania and the Anglicans in the southern colonies, the cultural tapestry was rich and varied. However, they were united by their growing dissatisfaction with British rule. The sense of shared grievances began to foster a collective identity among the colonists, who started to see themselves not just as Virginians or New Yorkers, but as Americans. The French and Indian War, a costly conflict between Britain and France, left Britain with a large debt and a desire to exert greater control over its colonies. The war had also brought the colonies together in a common cause, setting the stage for future unity. New taxes, such as the Stamp Act and the Tea Act, were imposed on the colonists without their consent. These acts were seen as direct threats to their economic freedom and autonomy. This sparked outrage and cries of no taxation without representation. The slogan became a rallying cry, symbolizing the colonists' demand for a voice in their own governance. The colonists argued that they should not be taxed by a parliament in which they had no voice. They believed that only their own colonial assemblies had the right to levy taxes upon them. Protests erupted throughout the colonies, from the Boston Tea Party to the formation of the Continental Army. These acts of defiance were not just about taxes, but about asserting their rights and challenging British authority. In 1776, the Second Continental Congress issued the Declaration of Independence, a powerful statement of the colonists' right to self-governance. This was a bold move, declaring their intention to break free from British rule and establish their own nation. This document, penned by Thomas Jefferson, proclaimed that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It articulated the philosophical foundation of the new nation and its commitment to individual freedoms. The Declaration of Independence marked a turning point in history, inspiring revolutions and movements for freedom around the world. Its principles resonated far beyond the American colonies, influencing the French Revolution and other struggles for liberty and justice. Life in the colonies was a blend of hardship and opportunity. The promise of land and the chance to build a new life drew many to the New World, despite the challenges they faced. Colonists worked as farmers, artisans and merchants, contributing to a growing economy that was increasingly self-sufficient. Their labor and ingenuity laid the groundwork for the future United States. Communities were tight-knit, with families and neighbors relying on each other for support. Social gatherings, religious services, and communal activities were central to colonial life, fostering a sense of unity and shared purpose. The spread of ideas through newspapers, pamphlets, and letters played a crucial role in shaping public opinion and mobilizing support for the revolutionary cause. The written word became a powerful tool in the fight for independence. As tensions escalated, colonial militias began to train and prepare for conflict. Early battles of the Revolutionary War tested their resolve and determination to achieve liberty. The birth of the United States was marked by the creation of new symbols, such as the American flag, which represented the ideals of freedom and unity. These symbols continue to inspire and remind us of the enduring legacy of the fight for liberty. Section 4. Forging a Nation, the Birth of the United States. The American Revolution was a long and bloody struggle for independence. Led by George Washington, the Continental Army faced a formidable foe in the British Empire. The colonists endured hardships, defeats, and betrayals, but their belief in their cause never wavered. With the support of France and other European powers, the Americans secured a decisive victory at Yorktown in 1781. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, officially recognized the independence of the United States. The fledgling nation faced the daunting task of creating a new government. The Articles of Confederation, adopted in 1777, proved too weak to effectively govern the new nation. In 1787, delegates met in Philadelphia and drafted the United States Constitution. This landmark document established a federal system of government with a balance of power between the national and state governments. It also created a system of checks and balances between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. The Constitution, ratified in 1788, has served as the enduring framework for American democracy. Section 5. A House Divided, the American Civil War. The conflict that would come to define a nation and reshape its future. The issue of slavery cast a long shadow over the young nation. It was a contentious topic that had been brewing since the country's inception, creating a rift that seemed impossible to bridge. By the mid-19th century, the United States was divided into two distinct sections: the North, where slavery was largely abolished, and the South, where it was deeply entrenched. This division was not just geographical but ideological, with each side holding steadfast to its beliefs. The Southern economy relied heavily on slave labor, and many Southerners defended slavery as a necessary institution. They argued that their way of life and economic prosperity depended on it, making any threat to slavery a threat to their very existence. Abolitionists in the North condemned slavery as a moral abomination. They saw it as a stain on the nation's conscience and worked tirelessly to end it, using literature, speeches and rallies to spread their message. Tensions between the North and South escalated with each new state admitted to the Union. The question of whether these new states would be free or slave states added fuel to the already raging fire, making compromise increasingly difficult. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a Republican opposed to the expansion of slavery, in 1860 proved to be the breaking point. His victory was seen as a direct threat to the Southern way of life, leading to drastic actions. 11 Southern states seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. This act of secession was a bold declaration of their intent to preserve their way of life at any cost. The American Civil War, the bloodiest conflict in American history, erupted in 1861. It was a war that pitted brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, and tested the very fabric of the nation. The Union, led by Lincoln, fought to preserve the nation. They believed in a united country and were determined to bring the seceded states back into the fold, no matter the cost. The Confederacy, led by Jefferson Davis, fought to defend its way of life. They were resolute in their belief that their rights and freedoms were being trampled upon and were willing to fight fiercely to protect them. The war raged for 4 long years, claiming the lives of over 600,000 Americans. It was a brutal and devastating conflict that left deep scars on the nation, both physically and emotionally. The Union ultimately triumphed, ending slavery and preserving the nation. The victory came at a great cost, but it paved the way for a new era of freedom and unity, setting the stage for the long and arduous journey toward true equality.